Welcome to Conversations with Zaki Baruti, your host Zaki Baruti, and like always when we start the program, I always want to get a shout out to the biological family, also a shout out to the Universal African Peoples Organization family, as well as New Life Evangelistic Center family headed by Reverend Rice. And on that note, tonight I am so excited, and I know you will be too, because we have in studio a icon of our community, a civil rights icon and a human rights icon right here in St. Louis, Brother Percy Green. Welcome to Conversations with Zaki Baruti, sir.
Yeah. Pleasure's mine.
Okay then, thank you. Percy, I just want to kind of cover a wide range of issues with you. But first and foremost, and you know, I say you were a civil rights icon, a human rights icon. But before we get into why I say that and some of the critical issues of the day, I always like to start my program out with letting the people know a little bit about my guests. So share a little personal history about Percy Green, if you will.
Well, you know, I've been around for a long time, so I don't know whether the program is long enough for me.
Well, give us some highlights
I'll give you some highlights.
All right.
I'm a graduate of Vashon High School in January of '54. And of course, I completed my college activities at St. Louis University. And I finished my master's.
What did you major in?
In political science.
Okay.
And, political science. And then, of course, at Washington University, I finished, I have my social work degree, MSW. I achieved that in 1976. And of course, you know about my involvement in civil rights activities actively from 1963, the Jefferson Bank protests, up until about 1980s, and then that's when action, went into, we dissolved the organization at that point. Action was in existence from 1965 to 1985, and then we resolved it, and then many of our members become consultant of other protest organizations primarily.
Okay, then, and we'll talk about your involvement with Action, and we want to define what the organization Action. But prior to that, so you're saying your first really involvement with the Jefferson
Bank in 1963.
Can you, just going back through history, provide the scenario to the people of what was the Jefferson Bank protest and what was the issues involved? Jefferson
Bank basically at the time was considered as a black bank, even though it was owned by whites. Mm-hmm. It was located, I believe, I'm certain, I think it was located at Jefferson and Franklin. And then at close to 1963, a year or two before then, they decided to move from Jefferson and Franklin to Jefferson and Washington, which was a all-white commercial area. And then during that transition, the few black people that they had working there disappeared. It became an all-white bank in terms of its staff. And of course, I was pretty new to the organization core at the time, the Congress on Racial Equality. And the group, made a demand upon Jefferson Bank to hire 4 tellers. And of course, the bank refused. And then, of course, right after the March on Washington, Dr. King's March on Washington in 1963, August the 28th of '63, then August the 30th was when the demonstration kicked off, because many of the core members that was, many of the members that was part of core, they were there in Washington with King during the March on Washington. And so we couldn't believe, those of us that remained behind, that they would get a court injunction to prevent us from protesting at the bank in a day's time. But the bank had to hook up with the court system and with the political systems, to the extent that within a day's notice, they got a court injunction that said that prevented us from carrying on a demonstration at the bank. So, not that the protesters, not that we would have honored the court injunction anyway, because we felt as if it was a First Amendment right that we had to picket anyway, you know. But nonetheless, on August the 30th, the picket lines was established at the bank, and a lot of the people that participated in the March on Washington really swelled the demonstration. We had a tremendous picket line there in front of the bank on August the 30th. And then, of course, Carl Ferris and some of the other more seasoned members felt as if that maybe we should go into the bank and carry on singing freedom songs and civil rights songs, and that's what happened. Well, as a result of the protests, the power structure, the white power structure, decided that they would arrest all of the so-called leaders, the leaders of CORE and the past leaders of CORE, and that was 9 people, and that included, the former Congressman Clay Sr., Robert Curtis, who was a very outstanding attorney, and some others. It was an interracial group, and then, of course, the past chairperson was arrested. And then, of course, later on, 10 other people intentionally broke the injunction, violated the injunction, and that's how we came up with the 19.
Okay, then, and we're going to continue that on the flip side of our break, so we'll just take a quick break.
Okay.
Welcome back to Conversations with Zaki Baruti, and in studio with me is civil rights icon and human rights icon, Brother Percy Green. Percy, on the other side of our break, you were describing the circumstances of the Jefferson Bank protest, taking us back memory lane in terms of one of the first most powerful, one of many different responses to racism in this society around hiring, and we were talking about Jefferson Bank. Now, a couple questions. In terms of the picket line, were there hundreds, thousands? So how would you say that?
The picket line, we had that first day that we picketed, we had at least a couple of hundred people that was at the bank, and then we picketed on the sidewalk, and then of course the sidewalk and the area of the bank only could hold so many people, but we had many other people that were just standing and observing. And then, of course, when the decision was made to go inside of the bank, then I guess we had close to about another 50 people or 75 people that went inside the bank and just sit down on the floor and sung freedom song. Well, the following that night, in the wee hours of the morning, they decided to arrest 9 of the past leaders, whoever was considered as the leader then, and past leaders of CORE. And they rounded them up in the wee hours of the morning as if they was Frank James and Jesse James or whatnot,
Right.
And then it made big news, that they rounded the people up. And then, of course, we were not going to be, the strategy was that we were not going to be put down and accept, the fact that they arrested what they thought of the leaders, thinking that was going to leave us leaderless, and consequently nothing was going to happen. So in order to show them that, then we had 10 other people who volunteered to purposely violate the injunction. And so a week later, even though they had 9 people already in jail, a week later, we had 10 other people that went on the Jefferson Bank property and sit down, and they too was arrested, and that's how it came up with 19 Jefferson Bank protesters.
Okay, then. So I mean, because we only have a short time, so much I want to cover with you.
Yeah.
And I would have to have you back on the show at some point.
Yeah.
How long did the Jefferson Bank protest?
Well,
what was the length of it?
The protest itself was about 6 months. Mm-hmm. The legal portions of it, it lasted about 3 or 4 years afterwards.
So there was a suit involved.
Yeah, it was an injunction, and then of course there was some appeals to the arrest, and therefore, and so that lasted about 2 or 3 years afterwards. And so therefore, the people that were in jail, the people were given some harsh sentences. You know, Norman Say, of course, was one of those people. He was given something like about 3 months in jail.
For peacefully protesting,
yeah,
sitting down.
But you see, they weren't even there. You know, they were held responsible for
as the leaders. Okay, then I got you.
I mean, that's that's what's so interesting about this whole thing. But long story short, I mean, that was the dynamics of that. The legal question, some of the people back and forth in jail because there was some legal problems here with some of the appeal process, and there was different rulings, and sometimes some of the people was released on bail, and then of course, I mean,
so it was going back and forth legally.
Yeah.
The final outcome.
The final outcome was that in 6 months' time of us picketing daily there, we were able to verify the 4 people that the bank hired, 4 black people that was hired as tellers, and it might have been another person that was doing something else. But we verified that, and therefore we stopped the demonstration. But out of that, interesting enough, we had some confusion within the organization. We had some differences within the organization, to the extent that some of the older people in core, they become a little bit different, had a little bit of difference to civil disobedience. Then some of the newer people also had some problems with civil disobedience because they feared that, if you continue the civil disobedience, then people would be going to jail for long lengths of time, So out of that, some of the more progressive people in core at the time spun off and formed Action, because we were not beholden to that thinking, that we were not going to be intimidated just because of those people. And so we developed Action.
And what was the name of Action?
Action was called Action Council to Improve Opportunities for Negroes. So that Negroes, I hate to even go back to that because that's a bad term, but that was for that particular
time. Right. And we're looking at what year again?
This is 1964, 65.
Okay.
You see, and therefore, black folks wasn't too acceptable of being black. I mean,
that has been
be Negro, so
transition.
We didn't want to be hung up on that term, so we just used that phrase. Yeah.
We're going to get ready to take a break in few seconds, but prior, I just want to reemphasize to the audience, which I didn't at the beginning, you are part of the #1 civil rights exhibit currently that's taking place at the Missouri History Museum, located at Lindo and in Forest Park. The Bolivar.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people, everybody need to go and see that civil rights exhibit. On that note, we're going to take a break. Welcome back to Conversations with Zaki Baruti. In studio with me is civil rights and human rights icon Percy Green. Percy, on the flip side, we had, and we're going down memory lane as it relates to the civil rights involvement of yourself and others in terms of trying to make St. Louis a better place for all.
Better place, exactly.
And we were at a point that you were coming out of Congress of Racial Equality.
Right. We out of the Congress on Racial Equality, the more progressive element within the group felt as if that civil disobedience should be the instrument that we use against the white power structure to expose racism, where CORE at the time, coming off of some of the members of, at least maybe a majority of the members, felt as if we should do the community action, Saul Alinsky's version. And that was a slow version. It was too slow for many of us felt that we need to do some radical surgery on the white power structure, and that was civil disobedience as opposed to Saul Alinsky's method.
So you were head of action, am I correct?
Yes, I was chosen to be the leader of action. This was in 1965.
I'm trying to rush through, and again, I'm rushing through this program, but I encourage people also, and we need to talk about that, the exhibit, this #1 civil rights exhibit at Missouri History Museum, of which you're a major feature there.
Well,
but going back to action real quick, I know there were several national kinds of events coming out of action, including the building of the St. Louis Arch.
Yeah, we took on the climbing of the Arch. Of course, I mean, that was a transition period of us, you know, it was a CORE. We did this demonstration in the name of CORE, but it was mainly of the people that was formulating action. And of course, the arch was under construction, and of course, we felt as if this was a national monument, and no black folks.
Wait a minute, they didn't have no black people working?
Black folks was working there that we could see.
What? After black people fought in World War II,
exactly,
Korean War, and all that?
The wars and
you mean tell me to build that monument, they did not have not one black person?
The rationale, now, you know, if they had one, if they had any, it was about one. and as many folks were working there, as many whites that was working there, you wouldn't be able to, it would be like flying a buttermilk or whatever. Well, I mean, I'd be like flying a buttermilk, and we didn't see that fly, you know. Right. So consequently, we felt as if it wasn't any, and we pursued as such. And then, of course, that led to the demonstration where Richard Daley and I, Richard Daley, a white student at the time, and I was working, I was gainfully working at McDonnell Douglas at the time. Well, we saw fit to participate in the demonstration of climbing the arch, and in protest of them not having an adequate number of blacks working on a federally funded program. And then out of that, of course, action then was...
Wait a minute, let me go back to that. Now, did you accomplish the goal? Were y'all able to get somebody of color on that
As
site?
a result, we did get some blacks, black contractors. We wanted some black contractors as well as some black employed. Some of the black contractors, that was Arthur Kennedy's sheet metal, Harding Electric. We had a black company, electrical company called Harding's. He got a piece of the action, and I think it was another black contractor immediately got some work there. And then in addition to that, some black employees was hired, and then of course, they were not readily accepted into the unions, but there was a union that blacks was involved in. I can't think of the name of it now.
Okay.
But then out of that, we took on big projects like hitting Southwestern Bell, Union Electric, Laclede Gas, because they too didn't have any black, especially black men, in these higher paying jobs. And so we took on Southwestern Bell, who didn't have any black telephone installers. They claimed as if at the time, and the same was with Laclede Gas and Union Electric, they claimed as if that black men would create a problem going into white homes.
Wow.
And so,
on that note, I'm gonna have to stop you because we'll have to take a break.
Okay.
Welcome back to Conversations with Zaki Baruti. Zaki Baruti, your host, as well as Percy Green, civil rights icon. Percy, you know this time just get past us. We have just only began to go down history lane and up to the present and into the future. So I'm gonna have to have you back on the show, okay?
Okay.
So with that said, though, and with just a few minutes left, a lot of what has taken place as far as the civil rights movement is on display right now. And share with the audience why they should go to see that exhibit and a little bit about that exhibit in the remaining time we have.
Okay, well, let me just say, I'll give you a thumbnail sketch on that, and that is, the thesis of this exhibit is pretty much around the litigations that had occurred coming out of St. Louis and the Midwest here and Missouri that influenced civil rights throughout the whole entire country. And so that's why it was referred to as Civil Rights #1, or something to that effect. And that is a very, very Supreme Court cases, including, everyone knows about the Dred Scott case. I mean, how it influenced civil rights throughout the whole entire country. And so that's how it got, that's the thesis of the exhibit. So you have any number of legal cases. And mine, was pretty much the last in terms of the civil rights, and that was the Green versus McDonald. But so many other cases, the Brown versus the Board of Education, and so on and so forth.
I think one that was focused around housing too. I think that was part of that. Right,
I can't
right,
think of it here,
right.
But housing.
So again, then, why should people who's out here in this audience, the thousands and millions of people listening, why should, say, a white person go or a black person go to the Missouri History Museum,
located there on Lindell
and the Bolivar.
And the Bolivar, yes.
In the city of St. Louis.
And it's pretty much, it's it's in Forest Park, you can say, as well. Well, they should actually become more familiar with the exhibit, and it's a quick history reminder.
So on that quick history reminder, you've been listening to Conversations with Zaki Baruti. Again, I want to encourage you to get out to the Missouri History Museum to get a more fuller detail of some of the struggles for civil rights here in the city of St. Louis. Again, we want to thank you, Percy, and we must have you back on the show.